All right, bonjour Nigeria. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is on his first official state visit to Paris. This visit is the first state visit to France by a Nigerian leader in more than 2 decades. President Tinubu and French President Emmanuel Macron participated in the Nigerian-France Business Council meeting yesterday at the Élysée Palace in a bid to strengthen bilateral relations and foster economic cooperation. France is also said to be seeking stronger relations with English-speaking countries in Africa.
Now, this high-profile visit comes as 2024 half-year foreign trade data highlights France as Nigeria's 6th largest trading partner with a total trade volume at 4.4 trillion naira. At a joint press conference after the high-profile meeting with both leaders, President Tinubu disclosed that Nigeria is committed to enhancing cooperation in key sectors such as food security, energy, solid minerals, education, and defense, highlighting the vast yet largely untapped political potential within Nigeria's agricultural sector. I'm just admiring the pictures. I think I think the president and his wife, look pretty interested in those coats and those. Yes, this picture.
I really like it. It's very interesting to see the president very differently dressed. Typically, we're used to seeing him in.
I'm not sure if it is the first lady that is
influencing him.
No. The one that is. I don't want to say cracking me up, but it's just. It's an interesting picture.
Wait, what's interesting about it? Can you?
It's just interesting. Never mind.
Okay, let's bring in our global affairs analyst this morning, Mr. Collins Nweke. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Sorry, how you doing?
Very well. Thanks for joining us, sir.
All right.
Sure.
Okay. Some are taking the president's visit with a pinch of salt. Of course, you would see that whilst there's the cute angles to the French president giving his speech in pidgin English and putting out a pidgin tweet and people awing, and there definitely are those who think that there might be an ulterior motive, especially with the arguments that France or the French are losing their grip on African countries. Is there really an eyelid to be raised here? Is there something to be concerned about?
Well, there are quite a few things. Well, I don't know about being concerned about, but I mean, students of political science would have 1 or 2 lessons to learn in, diplomacy, politicking, and pushing forward your national interest in a very subtle manner. Like Osorege introduced, at the beginning, there is very huge anti-French sentiment in the whole of Africa, particularly in the Francophone African countries where France was their, colonial master. Now, there is a deliberate intentional strategy here by President Emmanuel Macron to redefine its Africa partnership. And so they are looking to Nigeria, and like you mentioned, Olive, they are looking at the Anglophone, English-speaking African countries. Besides Nigeria being the dominant economy in Africa, it also has a very, very strong influence in Africa. And as we speak, President Tinubu of Nigeria is the chairman of ECOWAS. So this is a very, very strategically planned meeting. And let's not forget that, France is on the demand side of this meeting in terms of actually inviting President Tinubu. It also it remains to be seen how this will be reciprocated, because in diplomatic circle, when one takes a state visit, the other is expected to play the so-called return match. So this is all very well thought out. The niceties are there. That is part of those diplomatic protocols. But behind the scenes, I believe that there are quite a number of thorny issues. The ones that divide them, I know there are quite a lot, that unite them. But there are quite a lot of, thorny issues where disagreements have been there for decades, and it remains to be seen how they navigate all of those terrains.
I mean, former Senator Shehu Sani wrote on X, and I'm going to quote him. It says, improving trade, business, educational, scientific, and cultural relations with France is a welcome development, but we must not be their political or neo-colonial stooge in West Africa. And, I think that, is a seemingly common concern that some people have. But aren't there, benefits that Nigeria can gain from this bilateral relationship with France, improving our, economic relationship and trade between these two countries? Aren't there things that we can, maybe lean towards instead of, just being concerned about being France's stooge in West Africa? Are there positives to this relationship that we maybe should focus on?
Absolutely. There is always positives. And you also have to understand that, Emmanuel Macron is not doing this because he loves Nigeria, perhaps even more than he loves France is doing it. This is all part of, the national interest of France. But it's up to Nigeria to define its own national interest and push it forward. I mean, at the business meeting of yesterday, it was obvious that President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria is using this opportunity to deepen access to, foreign direct investment. As of last year, which is the latest figure, 2023, French investment in Nigeria is about 10 billion, euros, 10 billion, a trillion euros. And that's quite a huge chunk of money. Like you mentioned also, France is, the system, Nigeria is the sixth trading partner of France. And so the ambition is actually, that's for Emmanuel Macron, the ambition is to, get France to be among the first three, and that is in the best interest of Nigeria. Now, how they navigate all of that and the sectors that they choose is very, very important. We know of energy transition that is very, very critical to Nigeria's development. But we also know the disagreement that, both leaders have in that regard. Now, how they navigate all of that in such a way that France achieves at least a huge chunk of its ambition in that regard, and Nigeria achieves is subject to the negotiations that will be kick-started, during this visit.
Let's look at also what specific areas you've highlighted that, it's largely dependent on a number of the specific areas that will be explored. If there are specific areas that come to your mind that you think they should be further expanded on, and maybe I would even want to narrow it down to opportunities like education. Do we see that this would open opportunities to see more opportunities for scholarships maybe, or education in France for Nigerian students? Aside education, I want you to speak to education and then talk about other areas that you think could be further deepened as a result of this visit.
Very spot on question there, Olive. Education is one of the low-hanging fruits that you need, as a country in Nigeria to pluck here without needing a ladder. I say this because, there is already, there are already some sort of, student exchange, not academic exchange between France and Nigeria. And I think young Nigerians and young French people need more of, student exchange, inter-university exchanges, beyond the academics that go on sabbatical on both sides. I believe also that something you can fit into education is R&D, research and development. I think a week or two ago, we were on this station talking about, how data must drive, Nigeria's development? Well, it is done in France. And I believe that there is enough, knowledge and expertise that could be transferred from France to Nigeria in the area of, data science, data management, and the evolving, artificial intelligence. These are the sort of exchanges that could, fall within education. And then also, you look at areas like, cultural diplomacy, where France is known to be a highly cultured, cultural enthusiast, and Nigeria as well. So they can bring activities in that area within the concept of, university exchanges, particularly one that affect directly the, students, student-to-student exchanges. So in the area of education, yes, very much, to do, but then let's not forget also that culture, for instance, artifacts, these are, areas of, naughty concerns. Naughty concerns in the sense that France is one of those European countries that have carted away many of African, artifacts. The discussion, is ongoing as to how to return them, but also the issue of reparation. How do you compensate Africa, particularly Nigeria in this case, for some of those activities that, took place in the past.
Yeah. All right. Like you mentioned, the French president isn't doing this because he likes Nigeria, in particular. Even if he did work in Nigeria in the French embassy, I believe, when President Tinubu was governor many, many years ago. He's now eventually become French president. At the same time, President Tinubu has also become president. How fate works.
Full circle moment.
Yes, but you want to talk about, what France really could be targeting from Nigeria. There's, of course, what we mentioned earlier, which is the using Nigeria as its new, maybe, stooge in West Africa. But aside that, what things could, France be looking to gain from this partnership? What would you expect that President Emmanuel Macron must have calculated to enable and, push for this partnership expansion?
Well, at the heart of this relationship is trade. One will imagine, for instance, that when France pushes for accelerated, development in the area of energy transition, clean energy as opposed to, the use of fuel and all of that, you will imagine that the reason is because France has plans quite a lot of, technology transfer, which is actually bringing their businesses into Nigeria to do that. But Nigeria is rightfully saying, hold on, we are not so fast because, the petrol industry, for instance, supports quite a lot of economic activities in Nigeria. Yes, you can develop, you can transit to clean energy at your own pace, but Nigeria and other African countries, have got to, do that energy transition in their own, at their own pace as well. Now, I believe or imagine that a common ground will be found in the area of, energy mix for Nigeria, because France has done it, and, they stand ready to pump money by way of business, not really favoring Nigeria. Is no subsidy, but creating opportunity for French businesses in the area of bio, mass, and all sorts of other alternative energy sources. I mean, just to leave it at one example.
Okay. As we wrap up the conversation, there are many areas that have been highlighted: education, cultural diplomacy. But let's talk about insecurity. We understand the relationship between France and the Sahel region, and a number of the rejections that were made were because you will hear them argue that France was not able to help them fight insecurity. Is it a conversation that should come up? And do you see France playing a role in Nigeria's fight against insecurity?
Well, there is this French ambition of, using Nigeria as a hub, for its military operations in Africa. And I can imagine that when the senator, talked about using Nigeria as a stool, he may have been inferring that Nigeria should be careful so that, they are not used as some sort of attack dog, convenient one, for the rest of the world, where, for instance, French base is actually established in Nigeria. What some would say that is far-fetched, but you can't rule it out entirely. Now, in the Sahel region, yes, France has actually been sent packing, and that, as a matter of fact, affects French investment in that region. I believe that I imagine that part of the negotiations that will be, going on is actually helping Nigeria, helping Nigeria in counter-terrorism activities in exchange for Nigerian troops in terms of training them and all of that to, have deeper presence in the Sahel region simply to protect, principally to protect French interests in that area. How President Tinubu is going to navigate all of that remains to be seen, but I believe it's something.
And shouldn't that be a little worrying? If we, for example, get into agreements to protect French interests. French interests aren't necessarily Nigeria's interests. We should have no. In fact, the French should not even have interest on that level, in the Sahel region or in Africa in the first place. So shouldn't we be worried, that the president, assuming the president goes on to sign these agreements, because, of course, Emmanuel Macron knows what he wants to get, protection of French interests in the Sahel region and in the rest of West Africa. Shouldn't that be worrisome for Nigerians?
And also for ECOWAS, because you know how they've been trying to find a middle ground with some of these countries that already exited the region.
Yeah, well, in diplomacy, give and take, is part of the trade. Now, it depends on what you are given and what you are taking. Now, I would imagine that if there is a credible plan on the table by France to actually help in fighting Boko Haram, banditry, and all of that, and the price to pay for that is the use of Nigerian troops to protect French interests. In diplomacy, you could say that there is a win-win, but that is not to justify the fact that there can't be alternatives. But you see, at this stage, you can't rule anything out. It depends on what you are given and indeed what you are getting in return.
All right. Well, I guess in the coming weeks, months, we will see exactly what this visit will birth and the implication it will have on both countries, as well as the economic community of West African states. Thank you so much, Collins Nweke, for joining us.
Always my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.